Thank you. So, who's looking for a job? Who's got a job already? Yeah? Okay. Good. Yeah? So, hopefully we'll still be able to speak geek because I still do that for my day job. So, I've been in the IT and in particular the data industry for almost 20 years. Right now I manage a team of about 7 data engineers. We do data warehousing, business intelligence, and so I'm still very much in that part of the world. But I've been on a somewhat reluctant path of discovery in my own career. You know, in the data world, we're all about finding objective key performance indicators. We want to be able to give somebody data so they can make a data-driven decision rather than like an emotional one. But part of this reluctant path of discovery for me is realizing that data and facts and logic, and in the case of finding a job, our qualifications, is only half the equation. That facts don't persuade people as much as I'd like to think they would. If I'm wearing my data hat, I'd like to think I can just give you a number and you'll be persuaded, but it doesn't work that way as much as I'd like. For example, try to change someone's mind on Trump using facts. How well does that work? And both sides have facts, right? So that started me on this path of understanding the emotional side. I got the left brain side, the facts and the logic, but the emotional side matters. Especially as a guy, I didn't want to admit that. I don't have feelings. Feelings don't exist. They're like rodents of unusual size. I don't think they exist until they pounce on you in the jungle. Okay, but there is this emotional component that comes into play when we're trying to persuade and influence, and it definitely comes into play when we're trying to convince someone to hire us. And so that led to studying a couple different things. And so now, in addition to my day job doing data, I do corporate training and speaking, most often on body language. That's the topic that's most popular, how to persuade and influence with body language. I'm also certified in the Big 5 personalities, if you've studied that or taken that personality test. And then we just barely started IT career hacking to take the IT background that I have, but also these soft skills and social hacks to try to help you to get more job opportunities. So how do you usually find jobs, or what's the typical way that you think of if you want to find a job? What do we do? Send resumes out, right? Go on Glassdoor or Indeed.com and you send them your resume. And then you hope that you did a good enough job on the resume that you'll get an interview. And then if you manage to get an interview, you're sitting there through the haze of anxiety trying to convince them that they should hire you. And as it turns out, that's about the least effective way. It's a necessary way. I'm not saying don't do that, but it's a very ineffective way of getting jobs. Only about 20% of jobs are publicly advertised and have a front door. So who's getting the other 80%? Where are those jobs coming from? References, connections, people that you know. And then of that 20%, only 20% of those get interviews. So it's still part of the game to apply through the website, but the 80%, that's what I want to tap into. The 80% is what we do at Career Hacking. We teach people how to build out a network of referrals so that they can get those opportunities coming to them, which interestingly enough tend to pay better too, and changes the dynamic of the job search so that they're pursuing you and trying to get you to come work instead of you trying to convince them to hire you. Okay, that's what we're about. So today, what I want to do is we're going to cover 3 tips. We're going to focus on the interview for this session, and there's 3 stages to this. We're actually going to start before the interview even happens, a pre-first impression, and then we'll talk about the first impression when they come out to get you for the interview, and then we'll talk about some tips too on what you can do throughout the rest of the interview. But to start out, I want to do an experiment. I'm going to show you a picture of an individual, and without thinking about it too much, I want you to tell me what words pop into your head. This is a gut feel exercise, okay? What do you think of this guy?
Suspicious, scared.
Suspicious, scared.
Well dressed.
Well dressed, okay. Okay.
Disdainful.
Disdainful. Distant. It's not me. I did have hair when I knew Feely back in the day, but things have gone south for me. Okay, so I show this picture and do this experiment with lots of groups. I've done it for people in South America and Europe and the Pacific and people of all different age groups. And there's some interesting things when we do this first impression experiment. One is how quickly our brains are making decisions about him. In that first moment we see him, we're making decisions about how trustworthy we think he is, how competent we think he is, all just from the picture. It's also interesting to see how consistent the sentiment tends to be, even in people from other countries. A lot of times if it's a big group, I'll do a word cloud so that we can do some real-time sentiment analysis and see what people are feeling. Here's one from one group that I did.
Scary.
Wants to kill me.
Doesn't know what he's doing.
He wants to kill me. You know, a little more background on this guy?
Wants to kill me.
Yes. So he is a CEO of a job recruiting company. So if you were a CEO of a recruiting company, and you know he's changed the picture now, but you used to be able to go to his webpage and you'd see this picture, and this is what people were feeling. Probably not what he was after.
Something that I think is interesting is I feel like the majority of us had positive reactions to them, and those don't seem so positive to me.
Well, and I heard some mixed. I heard the nice dressed, but I heard lots of scared. I heard disdain. I heard suspicious. Scared, you know, the bigger the word, the more frequent one that comes up. And so scared and scary is probably the one I hear most often. In fact, this is a word cloud, well, serious in this case, but in this word cloud we had about 400 people, so a better sample size. But what's interesting is how often you get these same sentiments, even from people from other countries, which suggests that there's something innate as to who we are as human beings that we're seeing in his nonverbals and making us feel a certain way. It's also interesting to see that it tends to match what research would suggest we should feel. So, for example, see what he's doing with his eyes? What do we do when we're scared or we're in fight or flight mode?
Open your eyes.
Our eyes will get bigger, taking our more peripheral vision and all of that. So that cue, accompanied with a bunch of other cues, is communicating to us that he's maybe in fight or flight, or that he's scared or scary. And so that's probably why that one comes up most. So we're making these decisions in those first moments we see somebody, and they tend to be pretty consistent across the groups. Some of it's eye of the beholder, but the trends all tend to be about the same. And it matches what research says. And the cool thing about that is then we can leverage it. We can deliberately change what we're doing with our nonverbals and affect how people perceive us, which is kind of cool. Okay, this is the gut feel side. There's data, there's feel. This guy, if we were trying to hire him, maybe he's the best developer out there. But if I'm feeling these kinds of sentiments towards him, I might not hire him. Is that right? Probably not. But data folks, IT folks need to realize something that sales and marketers have known for years, that people don't buy on emotion, and they don't buy on data. They don't hire on qualifications as much as we'd like to think they would. They hire on gut feel. They are starting to recognize this in the data analytics world now. This is from Gartner Data Analytics Conference. They say that if a decision maker has some facts and their gut feel says something different, 90% of the time they're going to go with their gut feel, which as a data person bugs me. Okay. I'd love to just give them a nice chart that says clearly what behavior they should change. But if it's different than what their gut feel says, then they're going to go with their gut. So I wanted to see if we could affect this, though. Qualifications do matter. It's not like you can go into an interview or a job without actually knowing what you're doing. But if we can we affect the gut side and make us look better as a candidate? So I decided to test this with cookies at Utah Valley University. I got the data science club there to help me do a kind of an informal research study, but we had them involved so we could help make sure it was statistically significant and all that good stuff. And so what we did is we set up 2 tables with cookies, and we asked students going by to just try the cookies and tell us which recipe tastes better. Do you like the cookie at table A better, or do you like the cookie at table B better? Or you could choose no preference, they taste the same. What the students didn't realize is that the cookies were identical. They came from the catering service there at the college, so they were exactly the same. So if we were objective beings, then 100% of the people would have said no preference. Those cookies taste the same to me. How many do you think said no preference? What percentage?
5%.
5%, 20%, 10? That's pretty close. It was 11%.
I went down. Price is right.
There you go. Come on down.
That's it. It's done.
You get the job.
I should have said a word.
Once again, with my data hat, I'm like, really? They're identical cookies, but almost everybody had a preference on which one tasted better and which one they wanted. The other twist that we did was at one table we used some very strategic research-backed body language tips, some positive ones at one table, and then the other one was neutral and negative body language to see if we could sway which table the people would like better and which cookie they liked better. And of those that had a preference, almost 2/3 liked the table where they were using positive body language, some of the stuff we'll be talking about today. So we were able to take a cookie and make it look better. Which is cool as you're out there looking for jobs. There might be a whole slew of candidates that they're interviewing, and all things being equal, if you have similar background and experience, you can look better and you can have an edge over the others that are applying. And what we're after here is to try to find a balance. I don't have it in this slide deck, but there was another research study done by a psychology professor at Princeton where he would show pictures of political candidates to people, just a picture, no data. And then he'd ask them to guess who won the election. And people were guessing correctly about 70% of the time using just the picture, which again, as the data guy, blows my mind and concerns me for the future of our country. But just the picture. And what he found is that what people were looking for in their facial structure was trust. They wanted to see someone trustworthy and they wanted to see someone competent. If they looked trustworthy and competent, then they were more likely to get elected. And so that balance of trust and competence you see often in body language and in influence. If we can be trustworthy, warm, open, likable, have rapport with people, that's half of the equation. But we also have to appear confident and competent and powerful to get into the sweet spot where you get all the job opportunities and where you get higher salaries. If this is out of whack, if you're down in this quadrant, people see you as confident and competent but not very likable, then you might get the way through the force of your power and position, especially if you can get in leadership. Like, have you ever had a boss that was kind of a jerk? You know, they can get their way through power when they have it, but they aren't leading and influencing. On the other hand, if you're over in this quadrant, these are the people that are very likable and very warm, but you don't see them as competent. These are the bless their hearts. Okay. Bless their hearts, I feel for them. I'd like to hang out with them. But if you don't see them as competent, you're not going to hire them, right? I guess a pity hire, but you don't want to be a pity hire. And then if you're in this quadrant down here, nobody likes you and they don't see you as competent. So I want to stay out of that zone as much as possible. And the good news is that we can deliberately change what we're doing with our body language to boost perceptions of warmth and to still show confidence. Now, does that mean we're manipulating people? It could be. Politicians do it all the time. My hope is that you'll use these powers for good and not evil. You're already getting awesome qualifications from being here, and so the assumption is you are great at what you do, and this is just going to help level up your nonverbals so that it's congruent with that and give you the best chances. So use your powers for good. Okay, so let's talk about before the interview even starts. Oh, I do have it in the slide deck. It's right after here. I just had it out of order. Okay, we're going to start even before the interview, because what happens if you do apply for a job and they're looking at your resume, what's the hiring manager or the recruiter going to look at next before they call you in for an interview? Any guesses?
Social media.
Yep, particularly LinkedIn. Almost all the recruiters these days use LinkedIn. And so they're likely going to go to LinkedIn first to further vet you and to further look at your background and experience. So that might be their first impression of you long before you actually meet the person. So I want to start with that first. Let's look at LinkedIn. And since I do have this in the slides, then this was the study where they showed the pictures. And maybe how long do we have? How long does these things usually last?
Usually
an hour?
Half an hour. But
Usually half an hour?
if you keep giving us good information, we'll let you talk.
You want to just keep, because I can show you. This is about a 5-minute clip. It already explains what I already showed, but now you can see some of the pictures and you can play along too and see if you can guess who won the election.
We scheduled you for an hour.
Okay, cool. So this is Brain Games. This is on Netflix. You can go watch Netflix. Tons of cool stuff. This particular brain game is the one with the pictures of political candidates. So you can see if you can tell who won the election.
There's even such a thing as a persuasive face. Want to see what we mean?
This next experiment, we're going to show you the faces of different candidates for various local elections. We've paired up some of the winners with some of the losers. Something tells me somehow you're going to be able to pick the winner just by looking at them.
Ready? Go. So, which candidate do you think won?
What do you guys think?
The woman.
Got it? Now here's
Who
the...
thinks the guy?
Yeah.
Okay. How about that one?
How about these two?
The girl? Yeah.
What about these?
Some are easier than others. Going for the underdog.
The winners? Majority of the people we surveyed did.
So how did you pick those winners? How could you know, based on nothing more than seeing their faces for just a few seconds?
Bulgarian perception specialist Alex Todorov of Princeton University found the answer in a groundbreaking 2007 experiment.
The very rapid glance is sufficient to predict about 70% of the election outcomes.
70% of the time, we can predict the winners of the election
Blows my mind.
based on their faces alone. Pretty incredible. But what is it about these winners that persuaded your brain to vote for them? It's not just the clothes, the background, or even the smile. The answer has to do with two specific qualities you saw in their facial structure.
In our studies, we found that candidates who look more competent and more trustworthy were more likely to be elected in office.
Competence and trustworthiness. You may find it hard to believe your brain can make such complex social assessments based on a face alone, but it can.
It still kind of bugs me if I'm being honest. But what I thought after watching this too was, well, okay, that's fine if all the information you have to go off of is a picture, especially local politics. How many of us go into a voting booth and make a decision off name recognition? This name feels more familiar. But surely it wouldn't work on something bigger like a presidential election, right? I didn't think it would. But this guy, Todorov, came up with an algorithm of electability. It's so nerdy, I like it. He took all these different nonverbal cues that communicated trust and competence and came up with this algorithm that he could put candidates through to see how electable they were. And so he took all the major presidential candidates from the last presidential election and put them through this algorithm. And guesses on who was the most electable?
Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is kind of tiny, but Trump and Hillary were the two most electable. And then Trump edged Hillary out on the composite score. And then you've got Rand Paul and Jeb down here at the bottom. Yeah?
Is it orange
That blew my mind because in this case you have a lot more than just a picture. You have voting history, you have news stories, you have tweets. It doesn't. This is just the nonverbals, but it matched. And I don't think this will work with every presidential election because there are so many variables, but it's still highly correlated in who we wanted to vote for. Like with Ted Cruz, he was right kind of here in the middle of the group. There was a video floating around during the election from this neuroscientist talking about why he wasn't going to win because his facial structure made him look different. People talked about how he's whiny or other things like that, but it's his facial structure talking to our gut feel about him.
I just dug the orange.
Yeah, orange is good. Orange is good. So implications of this with LinkedIn then. They go to your LinkedIn page. When they've done eye tracking software on websites, they found that we'll make kind of an F pattern on the website with our eyes. Meaning if we want to put the most important material in that upper left-hand quadrant and on those two lines on the F. And so if you look at a LinkedIn profile picture, it's interesting that they have that outlined. So the very thing at the top is a picture, an opportunity to put a cover photo, and your profile picture, as well as your title. Those are the things that recruiters are going to see most. So does that make you self-conscious about your LinkedIn picture?
A little bit. I'm going to look at it.
Yeah. There's a fine line between self-consciousness and self-awareness. We can stay in self-awareness land. But what can we do about our picture? Well, there's a cool tool out there called photofeeler.com that you can put your picture up and allow people to vote on your picture. It's kind of scary and uncomfortable. And at least in the business category, they have a dating and social category too, but in the business category, they're going to rate you on how your perceived competence is, your likability, and your influence. So once again, the trust and competence balance we were talking about, they're rating them on the same thing. How competent do you appear? How likable do you appear? And then the influence, just because rule of threes, it's nice to have 3 of them, but I would guess that as competence and likability ratings go up, your influence is naturally going to go up too. So you put your picture up there.
What's the name of the website again?
Photofeeler.com.
Feeler?
Yep. So you put your picture out there, and then you cringe waiting for the feedback. I tried a couple different pictures until I got one that got decent enough ratings and then called it a day. I can't do much about the baldness.
I can have algorithms tell me.
Yes, well, that's the next thing. We'll look at some findings because they're taking all this data and finding out what the perfect profile picture should be.
Hey, just now, if all
Which
of
is
you
cool.
are like, hey, I don't think I look good, just put it in there and you'll have the computer tell you that.
Yeah. Well, this is people that are doing it. These are people that are rating you. So it's all gut feel. It's crowdsourced. So you can vote on other people's pictures too.
You're like, nah, you suck.
It's like a professional hot or not or something, I guess. So here's one of my interns. He tried 2 different pictures, but pretty significant difference in his competence and likability. And if a picture is enough to get you elected in office, then choosing the right picture may make or break your chances of getting an interview too.
Which seems weird that the top right one is the one that looks the most competent, when I feel like the bottom left one looks the best.
Isn't that the case? It's interesting.
Because the bottom one looks more for if you're hiring for like a business manager, I'd appreciate
got the tie.
and a little bit more clean cut.
It is interesting too because we'll look at some of their findings from the data here in a second. They do say that you want to dress nice to boost your competence ratings. That's one of the first things you can do. I think it's the glasses though.
I think it is.
Picture quality.
I think the left one just looks very
upper right because it's simple. And I trust more in something.
Simplicity.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I mean, there's many people that put many effort to look so good to their faces, etc.
Almost too much effort, almost too fake.
Yeah?
Maybe it looks too fake, too much effort to
For me,
go into it.
and I can trust more in something that doesn't try to look smarter, or more professional. That's just to show like who he is or she is.
Yeah, that makes sense. And some of this will be eye of the beholder, so the bigger the vote count, the bigger sample size, then the better it'll be too.
So we're looking at glasses then.
I think. And so and maybe we can dig deeper too with their findings here. They have a blog that takes all this data to see what makes a good profile picture. And so they have one on what the best profile picture things are to do. In fact, let me see if I have the URL. We can look at it since we got some time. Let me grab the URL here. Oh, I'm not connected to the Wi-Fi. We'll just look to this one. This is some of the findings. And then I think I can remember the most. If you go to their blog post, they have one on the perfect profile picture. And they'll show you, if you make this change, this is the impact it has on competence, likability, and influence. So for example, if you have a picture where you're not smiling, because I'm trying to appear professional and not too serious, well, that hurts your likability ratings a lot. But what's interesting is it also affected competence. Competence came down a bit. And you'll see that often, not all the time, but often there will be a halo effect where if you can lift one, it also helps elevate the others. Smiling with your mouth closed, that helps some. Likability goes up a fair amount, doesn't do anything for your competence, but then look what happens as soon as your teeth are visible. Now it's lifting the likability's going up much higher and your competence starts coming up with it. What does smiling have to do with competence? I don't know, halo effect. But if you laugh, all right, now it's less professional, and so the competence drops back down. There's a sweet spot in there, and I think I talk about it a little bit more. But as a spoiler, there's a fake smile and a real smile. Do you guys know how to tell the difference?
I tend to look at someone's eyes.
The eyes. So there's the fake smile you do for family portraits. Okay. or a real smile engages muscles around the eyes. They call it a Duchenne smile. That's what the neuroscientist said that Ted Cruz didn't have naturally. When he was really smiling, it didn't look like it. You couldn't see the little crow's feet around his eyes. And so it's interesting that this matches that. Mouth closed smile, your brain's telling it's not a real smile. I mean, it's likable, but I don't trust it completely. Oh, okay, it's a genuine smile. I like that one best. And then now it's not professional. Sweet spot, right in between the two.
And then defined jawline.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I can't do much about that though. I mean, maybe I could grow a beard and trim it a certain way or something. But some of the other findings, that the dress was big on competence, on dressing nice. So even though we didn't see that with his, if he took this picture but wore a tie, then he'd probably see his competence ratings go up, because that was one that was highly correlated to competence ratings. Glasses helped, if I remember right. Zooming in but not too far out. So you don't want the extreme close-up, but you don't want to be too far away. Maybe torso up right around here, maybe just the bust is a good medium range for distance. What were some of the other findings they had? Posture. Posture was one of them, to have good confident posture, which we'll talk about here in a sec too. Okay, so that is the first hack. Go out on photofeeler.com, put your picture up, and then wait uncomfortably for people to tell you how you look.
How long on average does that take? Like, should I wait like a week, or is it like a couple hours?
It depends on, since it's crowdsourced, however long it takes for people to vote on yours. And there's two ways you can do it. You can pay to get ones for you, or you can vote on other people's. So they're trying to incentivize you to vote on other people's pictures so that you can get some for yours. I don't remember how long mine took, maybe a week. It wasn't too long. Then we could get into micro expressions on pictures too, but I don't think we have time for that. I see lots of people, for example, with the one-sided smile. This is associated with a micro expression of contempt or superiority. Probably not what you're after with trying to get people to like you and bring you in for an interview. So that's tip number one. So let's say you have your LinkedIn profile is on point and it gets you the interview. And so now you're going to go into the interview and you're waiting there in the waiting room for them to come get you. We want to nail that first impression too. And the same principles are going to apply when they come out to see us. Those first 20 seconds, are they seeing trustworthiness and competence? There was one study I saw where they took professionally trained recruiters and let them watch a full 20-minute interview and then rate the person on different elements of hireability. And then they took just average Joes off the street and let them see 20 seconds of the interview and then also rate them. And the ratings between the two groups were about the same, suggesting that those first 20 seconds, regardless of how much training they've had, is very important in that first impression and if they think they want to hire you. So we're going to give a couple tips on how you can boost both of these when they come out to pick. What words come to mind when you see this picture?
Success.
Success.
Confidence.
Confidence.
A lot of likes on an Instagram photo.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's the only reason that photo was taken.
When we're confident, when we're victorious, we naturally take up more space. Our legs will be farther apart, our hands will be spread out, our head will go high, our shoulders will be back. This is what confidence and victory looks like. Interestingly enough, everybody around the world, regardless of culture and background, they show it the same way. If you watch the Winter Olympics, you'd see a lot of the same kinds of gestures. If they won, expansive body language. If they lost, then just the opposite. Shoulders rolled forward, head down, kick in the dirt, making excuses. Okay. Everybody around the world does this. Even people that are born blind. In the Special Olympics, blind athletes that were born blind, they found they did the same thing, even though they couldn't see other people's body language to learn what the right thing was to do when they won or lost. So this suggests that it's innate as to who we are, to show these emotions these ways and also to receive it, interpret it the same way. So if this is what confidence looks like, is that what you want to do going into an interview then?
What is up, guys?
Hire me.
I mean,
Maybe not that much. But you don't want to go to the other extreme either, where you're walking in. I mean, you're probably nervous. 90% of people are nervous in interviews, so you're not alone. But you don't want to walk in like a frightened mouse, or you're not going to appear confident. So find a happy balance somewhere in between, where your shoulders are back, your head's high, you're taking up a reasonable amount of space to show that you're confident in being there.
Posture is one of the most important things for confidence.
Absolutely.
You can immediately tell how someone's feeling by if they're slouching or not.
This is where all of us straighten up now.
Like if you notice, like in military drills, everybody's back straight and it projects confidence. Even if you have no confidence, if you stand up straight, you'll look like you're overly confident.
You look like it, and there's even some evidence to suggest you'll start to feel more confident. If you watch Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, there was some controversy with her findings, but the premise was you do it and you'll feel more confident. I struggle with the posture myself because I'm a chronic sloucher my whole life, and I have to try to deliberately tell myself to keep my back straight. So let's look at some pictures. Let's pretend you're the interviewer, and I'll show you someone sitting in the waiting room waiting for you, and let's rate them on how confident they appear in what we see.
6.
Can I get a 9? Does he look confident? And
Starting to distract himself.
okay, and there's the distraction part.
Because he's on his phone.
Okay, maybe he's on Slack. What's he doing with his body language that might show that he's not confident? Yeah, he's bending down. This is what we all do when we're bored, though, is get on our phones. So there's an obvious tip is don't get on your phone. It's tempting. You're sitting there.
I don't know about confidence, but he's not engaged.
Yes, yes. And they haven't interacted with them yet, but still just stay away from the phones while you're waiting for the person to come.
I was reading this thing that was giving like interview tips, and they were saying that if you're waiting to be interviewed and you're on your phone versus on your computer, people assume if you're on your phone you're wasting time, but if on your computer you're working and being productive.
Oh, interesting.
So
All about perception.
Yeah, his laptop out. And it
Yeah.
looked like he was busy, but he's maybe just on like Reddit or something.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
I'm actually thinking that if you're interviewing for a coding job and you're coding while you're waiting, and when they come to pick you up, they see your coding screen.
And you can show them. Say, look, I can code.
Let me just close my laptop.
I do like bringing examples to interviews, or people that bring examples to interviews, because it's nice to show you can do it rather than just tell that you can do it. So stay off your phones, and yeah, his posture's shoulders are rolled forward so it doesn't come across as confident. How about this one? Does he seem comfortable and confident?
He seems annoyed.
He seems
Like,
overconfident.
This one's kind of deliberately mixed in the body language.
Black Ops 2 or something.
This one's mixed. If I showed you just the bottom half, then you'd probably say things like comfortable, casual, confident, because this is more expansive. They call this the alpha cross. It's more common in Western culture. So that part isn't too bad, but this part, shoulders roll forward, self-hugging, when we're uncomfortable or nervous, this is what we tend to do. And so that might suggest to him that you are nervous or uncomfortable. I was in one interview that I was really nervous about, and I could feel myself start to scrunch up. And I'd be like, nope, can't fight it, just. And then after a few minutes, I feel myself, it's involuntary, it just starts happening. No, don't do that. So resist the urge to scrunch up, because that makes you appear less confident. How about this one?
oh, very nice. Yeah, he looks scared.
His wife's having a baby.
He looks like he did something wrong.
Yeah. I'm in trouble. Because this is another thing we do when we're nervous is self-soothe or do calming gestures. Touch our face, rub our neck, fidget with a pen, rub our hands in the interview when we're nervous, tap the table. All these things to get that nervous energy out. And so this, even just in a picture, is starting to make us think maybe he's self-soothing, as well as the low power because his shoulders are rolled forward. Well, how about this one? This is kind of the other end of the extreme.
That's a lot better.
It's better, but he seems kind of like
So it is more confident, but maybe too confident.
And he's like,
Looks like he drove his Ferrari.
He's borderline man-spreading here. And here's another thing to think about, and this is a balancing act too. this is kind of casual. I could take it or leave it almost, right? As a hiring manager, you do want someone to be interested and passionate in the opportunity. Maybe this is too confident, maybe this is too aloof, so that you're not showing that you're interested either. This one even more so.
It's like he's trying to hit on it.
It's like, how you doing? Well, let me give you something to think about. Who says you have to sit down? Think about these as guiding principles and do what's natural, but who says you have to sit down at all? A couple things I don't like about sitting down is height differences matter in perceptions too. One of the brain games on National Geographic had a picture of a tall guy and a picture of a short guy and asked people, who do you think makes more money? And almost everybody said the tall guy makes more money. Right or wrong, that's how height differences are perceived for success. And so here you are down there, and here they are up here. Right off the bat, you're on a different level, a lower level than them, which is going to subconsciously communicate that you're subservient, that you're lower than. As soon as you stand up, then you're on the same level. The other thing I worry about with the sitting down is they come out, and then I'm looking up. And you see what I'm doing with my eyes? It's like the fight or flight signal, right? And these little worry creases in my forehead. Not that I'm actually worried, I probably am, but even if I'm not, it might appear that way. I'm subservient and you're coming to get me for the interview. Okay? I'm worried about those inadvertent cues. So you stand up and you're on the same level with them and you don't get the inadvertent fear looking up expression.
I found what works for myself is when they come out to grab you is I always stand up and meet them in the middle and shake their hand because it projects like you're confident and interested without coming across as like, oh, you're scared.
Right. I think that's great.
But you have to like temper it because you can tell some of your recruiters might be more hesitant or a little bit more nervous and you approach them that aggressively might.
It's always a balance, isn't it?
You realize they're not looking for you.
You're like, oh, hey, how you doing? It's always a balancing act, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so you were showing, I'm curious to know, because you say that the cross legs alpha pose, right? So what about for us girls, because like, we're wearing a dress or slack pants, like does that show, because I know when you cover your arms, cross your arms or whatever, that shows like you're scared, right?
Yep.
So is it the same thing for girls when they have their legs crossed, or should we just be like, you know what I mean?
The answer is it depends. Yeah, it's a good consultant. When you guys are consultants, a good answer for that too. The arm folding is the most controversial, and the leg crossing is the most controversial of all the body language cues. Is this good or bad?
It depends on the context of the
Yes. It depends on context. And it depends on clusters. There's no Pinocchio's nose that if I do this, it always means I'm closed off or defensive. In a different slide deck, I have a bunch of different examples of people folding arms. One of them is this big buff guy, serious look on his face with his chin up. And for him, that's a power type of thing he's doing with his arms. And another one has a girl, arms still folded, but she's making a fist, her eyes are narrowed, pursed lips, furrowed brow. Completely different picture when you take it in context and with other clusters of cues. If you can find multiple cues that are all trending the same direction, it increases the likelihood that you're interpreting it the right way. Because it's not actually mind reading. Maybe that makes you guys feel better. I can't read your minds. And so to answer that question, it would probably depend on the overall context. Because arm folding is something we tend to do when we're uncomfortable, I wouldn't recommend doing that in an interview because you don't want to inadvertently have that be communicated. So with my arms, I'm always open with the arms. The legs is fuzzier science. It's a little less precise. I've seen some that say if someone's sitting over here and you cross this leg, your knee is a blocking mechanism to help you feel safe. Whereas if you do it the other way, then it's okay. So that's a little less clear. I wouldn't worry too much on the leg crossing. Nail the other things, the confident body language, and that's going to give you a bigger return than the legs.
You don't have to worry because you got all the perks already.
And if you were in a dress, you could have the royal pieces.
Oh, yeah,
like the formal princess way. Well, there's reasons royalty does it. It projects confidence.
It's all deliberate. And you can stand up and it doesn't matter. I've been playing with this where you talk with the receptionist because that also gives a good favorable first impression of emotional intelligence and likability because you're talking to somebody. Which can be hard to do though when you're nervous too. All right.
Just if a female is interviewing you and you're a male, you choose not to cross your legs, don't sit with the legs open too much confidence.
Man spread. Yeah, don't man spread.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the one tricky thing with this is it's all about balance. It's balance with who you're interacting with, and it's a balance on your own personal static nonverbals. So for example, if I was a 7 foot tall, very muscular bald man, I have a third of those attributes, I'll let you pick which one. Then I don't have to do much power body language, right? Because I'm already imposing as it is with just my natural attributes. But if I was really, really short and skinny, then maybe I need to up my power body language. Maybe I am more expansive to try to find that same balance. The balance itself is individual.